Hello everybody, Lawrence Fleming here again. Okay, well I just finished teaching some topics about Revelation, but I didn't focus on the problems that people have in the interpretation. I mentioned them as we went through them, but I want to focus a little bit more, and I'm going to have to do this in a couple of videos. So I'm going to do a highlight today and then come back and do some drill downs. But basically the book of Revelation has been taught incorrectly for a number of years. There are a number of flaws. I'm going to give you at least 7 today. And if I have enough time, and I'm only going to give you like one example to prove a point. If you want to do more research, you can. I highly recommend looking at Brenda Weltner's teachings. Most of the big teachers, your big Bible teachers that have been teaching for 30 years in church, teach it wrong. You go, how can they possibly do that? Because that's the way they were taught. Because the seminaries, all the Bible schools around, have the old style teaching, and nobody's tried to question it. And these teachings were started, hundreds of years ago, when they didn't understand much of what was going on. They didn't understand prophetic teaching, and there really was no interest in learning about it. When it was started, these teachings, Israel didn't exist. And we know that there has to be a temple in Jerusalem in the middle of the time frame that we're looking at. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but the bottom line is they weren't motivated. Why teach about something that's not going to happen for a long time? Now, during the time of Christ, they thought everything that was in there was going to happen immediately. They were looking for the rapture. Paul taught about it, and he had to write them again, tell them, no, you didn't miss the rapture, when he wrote them back in Thessalonians 2. And the thing is, too, when you read through the Bible, 95%, and this is just an anecdote, I don't have an exact number, I didn't count them, but majority of the references of Christ coming back are the second coming, not the rapture. The rapture is basically mentioned, but there's no time frame. Every time I talk about the rapture and I say it's going to happen this time, oh, you can't do that. It says you won't know the day or the hour. That's the second coming, people. It's got nothing to do with the rapture. The rapture is mentioned. It's going to happen, well, there's 3 of them, so that we don't get totally confused. But it's going to happen, the biggest one's going to happen at the beginning. And that's all you really have to know. Make that one and the other 2 are irrelevant. Okay? But it's not talked about because it's tied to something Satan is going to do. We have the Revelation 12 sign. We've already been tipped off that we're in the book of Revelation because that sign happened 5 years ago. We're getting close to our old style teaching of 7 years running out in order for the fig tree to come up. We'll talk about some of that. But it's been taught for so long that nobody wants to mess with it. They don't want to get in and investigate it. Because it is hard. You have to put a lot of time into it. Barry Oss put a lot of time into it. Brenda Weltner's put a lot of time into it. Those are the 2 you should be looking at. Now, we've got all these other teachers that are great teachers. Amar Safate, Greg Laurie, Tom Hughes. They've been teaching this end time stuff for a long time, but they've been teaching it the way they were taught. They need to get in and dig and find out where the problems are. Now, one of the first things, let's see, got to go off of my list here so I don't get out of alignment. Okay. Okay, where are we at? Okay. The first big problem is this is a prophetic book. It is not one of the letters. Now, John wrote a gospel, and he wrote 3 letters, and it's not written in the same style. So if you look at his gospel and the letters, they're written linear, they're very easy. They're not using a lot of flowery words, they're not using pictures or imagery. They're understood. Revelation was dictated. It's really, even though it's John writing it, it's Jesus dictating it. Go back and look at the red letter books and see how he taught. He taught in parables. He taught with figures. The ancient Hebrew writings were almost like pictograms that you would see on the walls in Egyptian buildings. The original alphabet was pictures. So this is the way they taught. And I've covered this before, but the Aleph Bet, which is their alphabet, Aleph is an ox and Bet is a house. Okay. The original Hebrew is that way. When you look at the modern Hebrew Bibles, as they're called, that's Aramaic. That was a language that they picked up in exile. It's close, but it's more boxy. It's more defined. So, okay. So it's hard to understand because of all the symbols. That's the biggest problem. And then when you look at it, it's not taught. The first part is kind of taught linear. We have an introduction. We have the letters to the churches. That's linear. He wanted to make sure they understood. And it's for them back then, and it's for us now. It's timeless. God's writing is timeless. Okay. The other problem that we're going to look at, because this is prophetic writing, it is not linear. Where is my... I'm trying to work off... I'm inside, as you can see. It's been raining all day. I can't go outside. Even if it stops for a little while, the trees are still dripping water. And all the tables are wet. It's all soaked in, so I'm inside teaching. I'm a little later than I want it to be, but I've been waiting, hopefully, that it would quit. And it just keeps popping up. To go away for a little bit and then it'll pop up. It's coming out of the Gulf, so there's an endless supply of water. And I'm in Georgia, so we're going to be doing this probably all day. As long as it doesn't rain on moving day, I'm okay with that, because I can work around this. Okay. We're going to look at the fact that it's not linear right off the bat, because I got to prove to you a little bit about what I'm talking about. I'm not going to prove everything today. There's probably 7 things that we could talk about. And I guess let me just go through and list. It's prophetic language. It's not linear. It's not 7 years. Daniel's describing the 7 weeks, the heptast, the years that we're looking at. And there's the belief that we've only got the last week left, the 7 years. I'm not part of the preterists that believe everything has happened. No. We still have most of what's in Revelation to come. But let's split the 7 years in half. And you will find no place in the Bible, anywhere, that equates the 70th week and tribulation. Only the second half is named the Great Tribulation. Nothing else discusses tribulation. It says in your life you will have tribulation. Well, that's every day. From the day you were born until the day you die, there's going to be tribulation. That's got nothing to do with the first half. So we'll get into that when we get to that part. Let's see. Oh, and the people keep coming up with, you're not going to know the day or the hour. You can't come up with these dates. You can't tell me the date of anything, because you're not going to know the day or the hour. Well, first off, that's the second coming, which is at the end. And we got all that stuff ahead of it. We got the seals, the trumpets, the bowls, the great tribulation, the abomination of desolation. Now, we don't know when it starts, because Satan's going to kick it off. And we'll get to that. But we do know the general order of things. I can't give you a date for the rapture, but I can tell you that it's going to start at the beginning, before everything else starts. So our rapture will be the trigger. Now, there may be wars lining up. They may be, somebody may have yelled out the order to start firing, but we're going to get out of here very quickly because the rapture is snatching away. So we're not going to see that. We may see it building. We might even see the jets overhead, but we're not going to be here. Christ is not going to put his bride through all of this. That's the good news for us. Okay. Let's see. So we talked about not knowing the date. Most of the verses talking about his second coming. There are 3 raptures. We've got, by definition, these are called pre-trib, mid-trib or pre-wrath, and post-trib. Okay. Now, the tribulation is not the 7-year tribulation, it's the 3.5. So we're going to have seals before that. And we're going to get out of here before that because we're going to have the Revelation 12 sign carried out. And we've already seen the actual event in heavens. And the next part is the dragon coming to earth. That's the part we haven't seen yet. And that's what's going to trigger everything. So it's tied on Satan, casting 1/3 of his angels down here. Okay? When that happens, and he comes down with them, of course, when that happens, that's when we're getting out of here. Now, is it this year? Maybe. It's not tied to a feast. It could happen around it. He could come down here to disrupt trumpets or tabernacles, but it's not coming down here specifically for that. And it says the last trump. There's an angel blowing a trumpet. They blew trumpets for everything. The ram's horns, they have them all over the place. The shofars, as they're called. They would blow those for everything. They would blow those for prayer time. They would blow them for everything. Today, the Muslims who control the air, you get on top of one of their minarets and they yell out. Their town criers yell out times to do things and yell out prayers. But the Jews did the same things with their shofars. Okay, I want to get back into kind of defining some of this. Okay, I'm going to look at the fact that the book of Revelation is not linear. So we're going to turn to, where'd I put my glasses? Revelation 7:20. So this is at the end of the seals. We haven't had the 7th seal yet, but the 7th seal triggers the looking at the trumpets. But there's an order, okay? So we're going to look at 7:20. We're going to go back a little bit before that. He's looking basically in heaven. We're going to go back to verse 9. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one could number, of all the nations, tribes, and peoples, the world, and tongues, standing before the throne of the Lamb. Now we're going to go down to 13, and one of the elders saying to me, who are these arrayed in white robes? You get a white robe for making it through and dying on the earth. Okay. And where do they come from? And then John says, and I said to him, Sir, you know. So he said to me, these are the ones who came out of the great tribulation. We're still reading the seals. And he's talking about those that came out of the great tribulation. Do you see where I'm getting at? It's at the end. We went through all the seals. The 7th is coming right up in chapter 8. And then they're going to go through all the trumpets, all the way to the end. Then they're going to do some housekeeping, of which Revelation 12 is part of that. But before that, the Satan is going to come down with all of his angels as part of that, to come after, as in the Revelation 12 signs, it's going to come after Israel, who's the woman, and the child is us. And Jesus is going to come down too. That's the rapture. So Satan's going to try to attack. For Satan, that's the last straw. Because after he comes down here, the next thing that it mentions is that he's kicked out of heaven. So he's basically the controlling aspect of us. All that we're seeing right now with Babylon, the harlot, this is Satan setting up the world, the Great Reset. He hasn't learned, and he's going to try to set it up. The beast is going to come up here in a little bit as well, and he is going to look at what's done, but not want to have to compete with the harlot. So he's going to come on with his 10 kings, and they're going to destroy the harlot. It's going to be, a major war. For that, a third of the population that's left is going to die. The fourth seal has a quarter of the earth die, and then those that are left, there's going to be a third of that. That's almost half. Take out a couple of billion for Christians. That gets us down to about 6 billion. Are we losing 3 billion? Or looking at the original total, 4 billion? I don't know. A lot of people dying. Christ is not going to put his bride through that. Okay. I want to make this basically a short video because I'm trying to get it out for everybody to pay attention. You've got to watch these videos that are talking about the new way of looking at the book of Revelation. And I don't want to redo the work that Brenda's done. She's got a new timeline. You want to look at it. I posted it on one of my previous ones. I'm going to go ahead and post it the same one here. This is for the rapture happening this year. She calculates her time backwards, which is the only way you can do it because we don't have a start. By calculating backwards, we know that using the fig tree generation, we've got 70 to 80 years. That's in Psalm 90:10. We know by looking at that 2028, 2029, maybe 2027, looking at that, knowing also that the Hebrew calendar is not the same as our Gregorian calendar. The first of their year is in the fall, and it runs till the next year's fall. Just like their days are offset. They go from evening to evening. And their years are 360 days, not 365. We have a leap year, they have a leap month. So you got to take in all these things. Dr. Berry has lined up all these things that have happened throughout history, and you see the days that these things happen. They all fall on this feast day, or on this holiday, or on this, the days of awe, which we just went through. We do have trumpets coming up next month. That's a possibility. But I'm looking at tabernacles. We're going to have a tabernacle, probably, for the temple. I'm beginning to think that they're going to be sharing the Temple Mount, or they're building the tabernacle someplace else. The original city of David was one place where they had it. But if they use the Temple Mount to build the actual temple, that's going to take a while. They might put up a tabernacle first tent. They used that for years in the desert. They had the ark in it. We've seen the ark in heaven. It's still up there. Do we have a copy down here? Theoretically, it's still around. Everybody who tried to touch it, everybody who tried to steal it from the Jews, gave it back to them and said, we don't want this thing. Get it out of our hands. We're seeing plagues. It's too much power. We can't control it. So it's probably hidden someplace. They may know where it's at, but they're not going to say. If they were to just go up on the Temple Mount and start sacrificing right now, it'd probably start World War III. So we need a little negotiation going on. We either need a war where the big bad guys lose, or we need somebody who can come in and bring peace. Stopping the sacrifices in the temple, that's the first half, right? Jesus stopped the sacrifices in the first temple. When it was destroyed, the curtain was torn. They didn't have the ark. They'd already lost it. It was hidden away. So there's lots of stuff we can talk on this, but that's all I want to do on this video, because I want it to be short. It's a little shorter than my normal video. And I'm going to put Brenda's timeline again up, and I'll put it at the end, so you can scroll all the way to the end when you get through, or just let it run. And I appreciate all those that are giving me great comments and wanted to support the channel. I want to throw this out, but I'm going to do you a favor. I don't report anybody's name who contributes. We don't contribute for that reason. God says to store things up for yourself in heaven. And what you do in private, He will reward in public. If I promote you now and give you an accolade now, I can privately do that, but I can't do it on the status timeline, because then you won't get credit in heaven. But I thank you for those that contribute. I am fully retired. I was doing some acting, but the acting community has decided to go full woke, so I'm not going to be working with them anymore. For a while, I was working on the edge. I tried to play as many good guys as I can. The only show that I did where there were bad guys all over the place, I was a stand-in, so I didn't have to do anything on camera. But I play doctors and things like that, policemen. I play the heroes of our current age. And they are, because they're fighting against the harlot. All right. Look over this stuff. Look up some of the verses that I gave you. Check them out. See that I'm telling you the truth on those. So that as I go into this a little bit more in detail later on, I can hopefully persuade you that some of these standard teachings that are out there are not correct. Now, one last thing. If you believe in Jesus Christ, if you've accepted Him in your heart, if you're a Christian and you're going to heaven, it's a moot point. Whether tribulation is 7 years, 1,000,000 years, or 3.5 years, it doesn't matter. You're going to heaven. This is for us to warn those that aren't going on the first bus. If you like my picture on that in my last video. If you're not going to get out of here with us on the first rapture, there's a second and a third. But you don't want to go through that stuff, believe me. But if we're wrong on the interpretation, it doesn't really matter, because we're still going to go to heaven, and that's the most important part. The reason the stuff is coming that's bad is to wake people up and let them know you've got to make a choice. If you've been putting it off all your life, if you're just finding out about it, you don't have time. You've got to make a choice now. We're down to, at most, worst case scenario, 3 years. It can happen this year. It can happen next. We've already had the Revelation 12 sign. Brenda just did a deal on 7s. It's been 5 years since the Revelation 12 sign. Do we have 2 more years to see it take place? I don't know. The rapture has always been imminent. It was imminent when Paul was teaching it. Jesus didn't teach about the rapture. They wanted to know when He was coming back as king. So He told them about when His second coming was. And He knew it was a long ways away. So the first thing He said was, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived by anything anybody teaches, including me. If I give you a reference, look it up. If you're not sure, ask questions. Somewhere in one of my videos, I've probably answered every question that everybody wants to ask, but I'm not going to make you go back and watch all my videos. If you have a current question, just ask it. If I refer you to a video, then watch it. Otherwise, I'll try to answer it directly. And by the way, I've got information on how to contribute to my various accounts down in the description. And I'm trying to kind of run in parallel with a Telegram account it doesn't have the features that I need, so I can't upload full videos. But I'm trying to build up my viewership over there, so I might drop YouTube links where I can't put a full video up because it won't allow it. I can put an audio up, but it's limited in size. I'm hoping that they would upgrade it, but they haven't yet. If you remember right, Telegram was the one that they created, and they came in the fact police and took it down. Then they created it on another server, and then they took the server down. So I don't know where they're hosting it now. Overseas someplace, wherever it's being hosted, it'd be a hard time to take it down. But it's up there as long as we have internet. I think the harlot at some point in time is going to take down what they can. But they need it for propaganda, so I don't know how much they would actually take down. And a lot of it's on shaky grounds because they use satellites to get all this out. Musk is using his Starlink satellite system to cover the whole world. That's why the whole world is going to witness the two witnesses. Talks about seeing everything around the world. That's why they're going to be able to do it. We've got the capability of internet around the world now. We didn't have this before. We didn't have the country of Israel before 1948 as a country, 1947 as a approved territory. The UN approved it in 1947. It became a state in 48. In 67, they got Jerusalem. They should never have given it up, but they did. They split it. And they put the Muslims in charge of the Temple Mount. You can tell they don't have God working with them and explaining to them how to do things because they make stupid mistakes. They help them, God helps them to win a war, and then they don't claim it properly. The Palestinians have never had a claim to that area. Muhammad didn't exist before 600 AD. And I will say AD and not AE or BCE or whatever. It's before Christ and after Christ, Anno Domini. They've tried to change everything. Satan tries to change everything. He's trying to rewrite history. Now the Muslims are going to be the happiest of all this coming up because they're looking for Jesus. And he's going to show up in the form of the Antichrist. And they're going to fall hook, line, and sinker. If you're a Muslim, you better pay attention. Do not be deceived is the first thing Jesus said in his Olivet Discourse. Be careful. We're all related. And God died for all of us. Jesus died for all of us. Every one of us, no matter what your religion is. It's up to you to pick the right path. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Till we meet in the clouds, God bless.